Okay, it's 5 minutes after the hour of 11. Thanks to those of you who have joined us today for our virtual town hall program, our webinar today featuring Dr. Gregory Miller from the Center for Responsible Travel. And we'll talk a little bit more and more formally introduce Dr. Miller in a minute. You see him on your screen. But first, it's my pleasure to introduce Carol Chaplin, the President and CEO of the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority. And Carol's organization, along with the other tourism organizations around the region, been working hard to alter their approach to marketing and messaging for our visitors. And Carol's going to give us a little bit of an update on that so that we have that as a starting point for today's presentation from Dr. Miller. So welcome, Carol.
Thank you. I'm going to hopefully share my screen here, Steve. Thanks for the opportunity. This is really exciting. I can't wait to hear Dr. Miller's presentation, and hope that actually when we receive the grade for sustainability, at least we can say we're going in the right direction. I would just like to start with, actually, I'd like to step back to last year and let you know that a lot of the DMOs that around the country actually were looking at the sustainability, this DMMO, Destination Marketing and Management Organization structure. We're not as far along as some of our other colleagues in this industry. But last year during COVID, we hit the deep end and started that process, because part of the sustainability process, as I think you're going to hear Dr. Miller say, is having a shared vision and a goal towards sustainability. And we found that with COVID, where all of a sudden we were in meetings every day trying to figure out how we were going to, sustain our destination and our community. So what we've done recently, as we've partnered with North Lake Tahoe to adopt a responsible travel pledge. And we were really thrilled to be asked to join North Lake Tahoe's effort in this, and great logo here, Lake Tahoe Traveler Responsibility Pledge that they offered for us to share. And we have put this front and center in some of our, in our advertising this year as we move into the busy summer season, because we found last year, as you probably all know, that we were overwhelmed to some extent, and realize that we need to create some stewardship messaging and just make people aware of what the right thing to do is as they travel. Not to mention the fact that this kind of travel, paying attention to the destination in a new and deeper way, can also mean a better experience overall. Our activations include our website, tahoesouth.com, front and center, and also our social media that's ongoing, peppered with all these kinds of messages, and then linking out to some of our partners that are doing great work in this space. For instance, the League to Save Lake Tahoe and their Blue Crew message, we'll link that out, or the boat ramps will, and not boat ramps, but the inspection area, and how important it is for people to get a reservation and get their boat inspected before they try to enter the basin, etc. What we had started a while ago actually was what we call Pledge for the Wild. We were one of 5 mountain communities that founded Pledge for the Wild. It wasn't our idea, but we jumped on board right away. And this is where people, when they come into our destination, can actually make a donation to something that makes a difference in their stay. And so the idea is to, if you're recreating, maybe it's $1 per hour that if you're hiking for 3 hours, you might donate $3. And we had chosen the Tahoe Fund and their trail maintenance program as the beneficiary of those dollars as they start to come in. And you'll see that more as we move into the busy season. This is our activation of the Pledge for the Wild, and of course, if you use the QR code, you can go ahead and donate right there on your phone, which makes it really easy. And then the other two things that we did, Kind Traveler is an OTA platform, a third-party platform where you can make reservations, but specifically with the idea that you're purchasing a product or a hotel lodging that is environmentally conscious. So we have two of those in our area, and we're working with Kind Traveler on an ongoing basis to bring on more hotels, and to also one of their premises is that when you make a reservation, that there is a $10 donation to either your nonprofit of choice or the one that we have selected. Take Care, of course, you all know this. It's really gained traction last year. You see the Mask Up video and some other, or the Mask Up billboards. We participated in those, offered additional funding to that. Take Care, you can see the Kind Traveler here on the left of the screen. Edgewood Tahoe and Hard Rock Lake Tahoe are participating in that program. And then the donation that we have selected again is Tahoe Fund, or you can select your own nonprofit in order to participate in the destination and make your dollars meaningful. Last year we did, as I mentioned, we did participate with the Take Care program and billboards, the digital billboards around the basin, reminding people that to mask up. And now this year we're participating again with Take Care to talk about a little bit more sustainable travel, Tahoe Tap, and of course the dog poop, also fire messaging, and the other really important trash pickup, etc. Of course, we did start working much closer with the League to Save Lake Tahoe. That's doing some great work this year, and encouraging everybody to get out and do a little bit to make the destination a better place to be, leaving it better than you find it. And that's the whole concept of us, working together towards cleaning up trash and other stewardship activities that not only make this a better place, but make you feel better about the place that you visited. And then the other thing that we contributed to this year is the City of South Lake Tahoe's Ambassador Program. I don't know whether you're all aware of that, but it is a really great program utilizing our youth in the area to be in those busy places in our destination on the South Shore, so that they can answer questions, but also remind people of what the best things to do while they're here. That program will go all summer long, and I believe it's also with Lake Tahoe Unified School District, El Dorado County, and other partners, so that we can really meet people where they are recreating, so that we can continue to remind them the best way to do that. The ongoing collaboration really is a part of the sustainable travel concept. All of these people here, their logos are represented. These are people that we talk to almost weekly now, sometimes daily this last year, and trying to understand how we can help with, for instance, land management, or like I said, the trash pickup, etc. And we are involved in all these conversations and at those tables. It's important as we go forward, actually, in this process, to understand that we're all working towards the same goal. And this summer, we are working with this group to identify what that vision really is, really drill down into that vision, so that we can share that vision as we move forward, and really amplify to our visitors what we are, the right behavior and the right things to pay attention to. Once we get that vision, the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority will weave that into our advertising and marketing strategy, so that we can continue carrying those messages, outside of our borders, really into those markets that we're interested in getting the right people to come here, but also now looking internally into the destination and help support all of these organizations in their own messaging. That's all I have for you today. I think Dr. Miller is the feature here. We're so happy that we were able to help the Chamber sponsor this program, and I will turn it back over to you, Steve.
Thank you very much, Carol. I know that you're going to try to stay through the whole program. There are two questions that have come up that I would like to have you address right now before we go to Dr. Miller. And one, and I think you did talk about it. Somebody asked, which were the two hotels? And I think you identified them as Edgewood and Hard Rock Lake Tahoe. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then
there is some on the Kind Traveler. There is an agreement between Kind Traveler, the company, and that specific resort. But we are working together, with that company and with the resorts to work on increasing their lodging bookings with that concept of donate, contribute, and then possibly identifying other hotels that could be introduced to Kind Traveler for consideration.
Appreciate that. The other question was, a long time program that has been promoted around the region is the America's Most Beautiful Drive. How does that fit into the equation?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, as we know, as we move forward, we want to get people out of their cars. We don't want to really encourage people driving. We are not really actively promoting the drive, the beautiful drive right now. We know that we have enough of that going on, so we will not be focusing on that. And then, of course, in our space, we're working with, as you know, Steve, the South Shore Transportation Management Association, right, and other transportation, TRPA, to understand how we can further transportation, for our visitors and for our residents.
Right. Great. Thank you, Carol. And thank you again for your sponsorship for today with LTVA, all the things you're doing. We really appreciate it. Thanks for your opening comments. We will now it's my honor to introduce Dr. Greg Miller, who's the Executive Director of the Center for Responsible Travel. And just a little bit about the center. Center for Responsible Travel is a global nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C., dedicated to increasing the positive global impact of responsible tourism. CREST provides evidence-based research and analysis to governments, policymakers, tourism businesses, nonprofit organizations, and international agencies to solve the most pressing problems confronting tourism, the world's largest service industry. I want to just briefly talk a little bit about Dr. Miller. He is the Executive Director of CREST. He's a responsible tourism advocate and trained environmental scientist who believes in working globally, acting locally, and protecting our precious natural and cultural resources. He joined CREST in 2019, bringing the organization a global track record of results in sustainable travel and recreation, biodiversity conservation, and policy development. And I also know that Dr. Miller, although he travels the world, is a native Californian. So welcome to you, sir. Dr. Miller, a pleasure to have you today.
This is wonderful, Steve. Thank you so much. And I really want to thank everyone for this kind invitation. And I want to also just ask everybody, if you wouldn't mind, giving yourself an applause. What Carol Chaplin just outlined is a really pretty extraordinary set of tools and talent coming together. There is, and this is one of the reasons we, at CREST, we have been working for a few years now with the Tahoe Basin leadership, trying to help you, both learning and then trying to help with a sustainable vision. And I had the good fortune to spend the day with everybody in late February at that workshop. But we are a very proud partner and want to just recognize the extraordinary vision and leadership that the Lake Tahoe Basin stakeholders have shown for many years. And I think that's very important. Whilst there's so much to be done, and you have innumerable challenges in front of you. There's a reason I have the Yosemite Valley as my backdrop today rather than Lake Tahoe, and it's because, as I think many of or most of you know, that while Lake Tahoe is 1/3 the size of Yosemite National Park, you have 3 times the visitors in 1/3 the space. And let's just keep that in mind in terms of the extraordinary challenges and opportunities. But at the same time, one of the things that I'm an ecologist by training, a native Californian, and I've had the good fortune to spend a considerable amount of time in the greater Tahoe area. I was the president of the American Hiking Society for 12 years and worked closely with the Tahoe Rim Trail and with, of course, the Forest Service all across the country. My point here is that there's an extraordinary juxtaposition of natural, cultural, and scenic beauty in the Tahoe Basin. And I think the Tahoe Basin really does embody one of the most or finest characteristics of America's shared public lands and waters. And each of you who are involved in either tourism, outdoor recreation, boating, education, etc., you are all, whether you like it or not, stewards of that extraordinary jewel in the crown of American natural resources. And so I just wanted to comment on that. Also, I wanted to just focus on now, which I think are really quite exceptional, and they align very well with what we have been doing historically and certainly in the future at CREST. Mentioned the importance of the Tahoe Pledge and ability to do for visitors to do some fundraising, a simple but very valuable support through the Tahoe Fund, which is an excellent conduit. But this really reflects creative, innovative leadership in what we call impact tourism, making that mechanism available for visitors to support, give back in a simple but very direct way. So that's one point. The second is, interestingly enough, CREST, we work very closely with Kind Traveler. And in fact, we have Jessica Blotter, who is the founder and CEO of Kind Traveler. She is on the Center for Responsible Travel's board. And we're really excited to see how they are expanding their impact tourism work in the Lake Tahoe area, and we strongly encourage that. The third synergy, if you will, I wanted to comment on, and again, Carol very, very nicely teed this up, is the exception Take Care Tahoe program. And I know I don't think Amy Berry's on today, but from Tahoe Fund, that is a really exceptional, creative and clever campaign. And it's not just for Lake Tahoe, because the leadership that the Take Care Tahoe team is showing, we have now at CREST been able to link Take Care Tahoe with our partners in Cape Cod and the islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. And because of some interesting synergies between Take Care Tahoe and now Take Care Cape Cod, we see in essence, the vision, the experience, the lessons learned from you all here in the Tahoe Basin through Take Care Tahoe are being transferred to another very high tourist area, and that is Cape Cod shore, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket Island. So again, this is what leadership is all about, and we're very excited of that. So with that, I'm going to, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to share my screen. And Steve and I had a long talk in terms of what would make the most sense for me to talk about. And I think some of you may know that I was invited to speak at the February 25th workshop on sustainable tourism and outdoor recreation. So I'm going to touch on and deepen my thoughts and perspective on some of those points again here. But I really want to set up a kind of framework for you all to consider as it relates to the future of the Tahoe Basin, both for its residents and for that very diversified visitor base that you have seen during the pandemic, and you will see, and it will continue to evolve in a post-pandemic environment. So let me jump in, and hopefully you can see my screen. It should be a very familiar image there. And again, I just want to say that it's my great honor here. I am at the helm of the Center for Responsible Travel. As I mentioned, I was for 12 years former president of the American Hiking Society, so I know outdoor recreation quite well, and have worked with all the federal land and water management agencies. But also, as part of my career, I spent 16 years as vice president of the Nature Conservancy, and so I've been steeped in really the human nature interface for my career. So just let me share a few quick things about CREST. We've been around since 2003. We're a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit. And our purpose, and Steve already shared a bit of that, so I won't go through that again, but we really seek sustainable tourism solutions. And we have long targeted the Lake Tahoe Basin as both an incubator for ideas, but also have developed the capacity and the partnerships that very few destinations of this scale have ever developed. And that's very exciting. So at CREST, we are focusing on developing sustainable tourism solutions to address 4 major crises. And frankly, each of those is in play in some manner or another in the Lake Tahoe Basin. They're addressing tourism in a climate crisis, addressing over-tourism, conserving biodiversity and cultural heritage in place, and narrowing the wealth gap, addressing that inequity between people who work in tourism and whether they have an affordable wage, and they can, in fact, even live in the place of which they are working. And certainly the Tahoe Basin presents that. CREST, we focus on a variety. We're an extremely evidence-based organization. We have a strong advocacy and research basis to our work since day one. It's in our DNA, but we really are built on collaboration, not competition. And we build that in such a way, and I'm going to talk about a few examples that are relevant to Lake Tahoe that really help us, as I like to say, punch well above our weight. We are a nonprofit, but we do a select number of contracted field projects and assignments that meet with our mission and vision. And so that's a very exciting element for us. I also would like to say that, and I'm very happy to announce this, is that CREST, I just signed last week with the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. We have signed a formal agreement to partner to ensure that travel and outdoor recreation ethics messaging is coordinated, is very clear, and is relevant to all populations, both who are tourists who may not consider themselves recreationists and vice versa. And this presents a really exceptional opportunity for us. And I think it's something that we can look at more deeply as we move forward together as partners in the Lake Tahoe Basin. Now, we work in our geographic area is global, but primarily CREST, we have field projects in the Americas. We do work in quite a few spots, as you can see on the map, even though it is obscured a bit by that book. But there's a reason why I have that book cover there, because while we work throughout the world, we had 30 countries involved in our program in one form or another. I'm very happy and proud to report that just the end of May, we launched our new book, Over Tourism: Lessons for a Better Future. And when we began this publication, it was pandemic didn't exist. Over tourism was a very big threat. And then we had the unfortunate and untimely pause in tourism in most places, not necessarily in Lake Tahoe, we weren't sure whether all the wonderful lessons learned in our book are going to be relevant. Well, guess what? They're 100% relevant. And I want to recognize that CREST, we have had a long, very direct, strategic, and deliberate partnership with TRPA. And I want to highlight our good friend Julie Regan from TRPA, because I put her name up there, because she's author of one of the chapters in our book on over-tourism, specifically highlighting the innovative and creative governance model that TRPA and you all have developed over the years in Lake Tahoe. And this is a model not just for the United States, but it's a model that we are very interested in showcasing moving forward, frankly, globally. So there's, you can see, CREST, we have a lot of connections, a lot of tendrils, so to speak, with the Lake Tahoe Basin and with the professionals here. Now we're talking all about, of course, tourism, and with 15 million visitors a year, you certainly know tourism well. But let's talk a bit more about travel and tourism as it relates to, and I'll talk just for a few moments about travel and tourism pre-pandemic, but this is really going to be germane for our conversation today. I think everyone knows that, or maybe you don't, but tourism as a sector pre-pandemic accounted for 10% of the global growth GDP. And that 1 in 10 jobs, and almost 60% of those jobs, were with women. And that is a significant factor there. One of the things that we also have recognized, and I want to underscore, and this is certainly in play in the case of the Lake Tahoe Basin, is tourism is an experience-based economy rather than an extraction-based economy. And this is really where we are focusing. In Lake Tahoe, you are front and center on this, looking at people's experience, association, and interconnectivity with places and with people, whether it's families, with meeting with the residents, local people that are in Lake Tahoe, or just enjoying the extraordinary water and land opportunities in Lake Tahoe. But while you are dependent to a great measure on, of course, travel and tourism, there are over 125 countries in the world where tourism plays a major role. And as I think everyone knows, there has been an extraordinary collapse in a number of national and regional economies as a result of no travel. And that's been very important. And that is really profound also when we think about it, because more than about 83% of all developing nations depend on tourism to a major degree in terms of it being their main foreign exchange earner in terms of hard currency, whether it's dollars, euros, British pounds, etc. That's an extraordinary thing outside of our borders, and that has created a double jeopardy almost for many countries that have been experience-based economies that may have no alternative but to revert back to destructive, unsustainable extraction activities like slash and burn agriculture, wildlife poaching, things of that nature. And we are seeing that, no question. Another important element that I just want us to keep in mind as we go forward in our discussions today is that tourism is a very important instrument for sustainable human development. And it is a fantastic educational tool, allowing visitors, of course, to take lessons home. And I think what Carol Chaplin commented on just a few minutes ago is 100% germane to what I'm talking about, in the sense of the importance of the destination marketing organization, destination management organization, looking at ways to message, inform, engage, and increase awareness of visitors. And I'm going to come back to that point as a key recommendation for you all. Now, one thing that's been very important for CREST is, as I mentioned, we seek sustainable tourism solutions, but we realized that we needed to amplify our own impact, that as an organization on our own, we needed to do something more. So we really, in late 2019, we really came together with 5 other nonprofit organizations, or what we call NGOs, in a form of radical collaboration, we like to call it. And we created the Future of Tourism Coalition. And we established 13 guiding principles for the future of tourism. On the slide there, you see the 6 organizations plus the GSTC, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, which was a technical advisor for us in the formation of our coalition. And I'm happy and very proud to report that when we rolled out in June of last year, so we're celebrating 1 year, we had 22 original signing signatories of our 13 guiding principles. And I'm very happy to report that TRPA, your very own TRPA, was one of those 22. And so Lake Tahoe Basin has been in the vanguard of this movement since day one. And we're very excited about that. And this is something that we've discussed with Joanne and with the team, with Julie and Jen and the others at TRPA. And I think this collaboration in the basin, we would like to see this really get much more of a global spotlight for innovation and for commitment to a sustainable tourism future. And that's something I've already heard from so many people in Tahoe. And so we're very excited about that. Now, one thing I want to say, and we can come back in maybe some discussion. We got together and it's like, okay, great. Here's another coalition that's got guiding principles out, but it's all voluntary. There's no teeth to it or no regulatory framework, let's just say, associated with it. And so what we did, and it's true, it's all voluntary. What we did early on is that we established as our foundation that destinations and local communities should be at the center of the future of tourism. And that is something fundamental. And you can see this is our graphic that we use, and we've used this all over the world, and it's translated in some other languages, certainly. But bringing this kind of 3-legged stool of a variety of public sector players, of course, we have all of this in play here in Lake Tahoe Basin. The private sector, essential, and NGOs. You add a 4th layer, in essence, of tourists themselves, and it becomes a very potent combination to be looking at how we can support and really empower local destinations. What I want to underscore in this is that we are looking at tourism, and I encourage all of you to look at tourism and outdoor recreation as input to sustainability and a responsible recovery, not as endpoints. That's a very important distinction, so that when we're looking at what kind of impacts we want to see, it's not a question of whether more tourism is the end result or less tourism, but are we having the quality, and that the lands and waters that are so important, the quality of life, the local communities are thriving. So what we've done is that we've again really centered around destinations and communities at the center of tourism, and I implore Tahoe to move forward in this, that we want to be looking and encouraging that the destinations focus on either regenerating or restoring or protecting functional, stable systems, that you look at resilience in the face of uncertainty, and we've already seen how difficult it's been for all of us to face this incredible pandemic, and that we develop metrics that matter. And I'll come back to these points in a moment. But let me go through some steps here, and I hope this will be helpful for you to kind of, in essence, put together a bit of a roadmap for a responsible recovery. Now, a responsible recovery to the pandemic in Lake Tahoe's case is very different than most destinations, because you really haven't seen the complete collapse of tourism. On the contrary, you've seen tourism that's been in some measure higher than what you've normally experienced, and a very new cross-section of tourists in themselves. So let me just outline quickly for you some important considerations to keep in mind for us as a responsible recovery. These are, in essence, strategic steps that we see are crucial. First one is that we want to build on collaboration and partnership, not competition. I have heard many times in the February workshop I was at virtually at Lake Tahoe the concept and the concern of siloing. This is an endemic, a pandemic of another kind as it relates to destination governance. The reason we created our Future of Tourism Coalition was because we recognized that collaboration and partnership is the future, not competition. Second, and I've already mentioned this, is the destination and the local communities must be at the center of a sustainable tourism model. The third is that intentionality to sustainability is essential. It's not just a one-on or one-off. Sustainability, as we define it, that focuses on the whole systems of the natural, cultural, and even spiritual systems that may be found in a destination, it needs to be within the core of business practices. And then, of course, tourism and a climate crisis, we are unfortunately faced with almost a triple threat of the pandemic, climate crisis, and a potential extinction phase of sixth extinction phase of biodiversity because of these other factors. Now we take on, I'm trying to be a doomsday. What we need to do is we really need to be smart. We need to be agile and we need to plan. We need to all be thinking ahead collectively in a collaborative manner and be looking at adaptation, resilience, and ensuring that we have measures that matter. If we do that, if destination stakeholders commit to that and pay deliberate attention to these points, what I want to underscore, and I know there are a lot of business people on the call, on the talk today, by focusing on this level of sustainability for the Lake Tahoe Basin, my hypothesis here to you today is that you will experience increased competitive advantage in a post-COVID tourism environment. And let me explain a little bit more about what I mean there. First is looking at a post-pandemic, and by the way, that slide in the lower left was taken, I didn't take it, but it's during the really catastrophic 2019 ascents of Mount Everest. You want to talk about over-tourism having an impact. Several people died on those ascents as well as the descents because it was a totally risk-averse, high-risk effort in the greed and desire of people to want to do something in the face of common sense and good planning was just terrible. So that's what that picture is. But what I want to underscore is that we encourage and implore all destinations like the Lake Tahoe Basin to take a holistic approach to sustainability, looking at the natural, cultural, and spiritual elements of place. So, be thinking about that as we move forward. Second key competitive advantage for you all in Lake Tahoe is by taking a very deliberate approach to both preparation and effective risk management as it relates to climate change, as it relates to over-tourism, et cetera, will put you in a competitive advantage situation and also be able to, frankly, protect your way of life. I know that you're all very nervous about the high temperatures that you've got in the basin right now and surrounding areas. The risk of wildfire is, I hope, is not on your doorstep, but these are conditions that are really being aggravated, of course, by climate change, and preparation is necessary. Risk management for all of these is, of course, and of course, you have a number of people that you're entrusted their care by visitors each day in the Tahoe region. Third thing to think about is your plans for adaptation and resilience. And I'll come back to that in a minute. And then fourth is, and these are points that I raise in any talk looking globally. Decarbonization is really fundamental. So let's look at Lake Tahoe and see a little more detail of what the competitive advantage really can look like for a responsible recovery in Lake Tahoe. One is that we really want to see that the local economies and the ecosystem health are sustained. The second is there is really probably an important pivot needed to promote better social equity, access, and distribution of benefits. And we can come back to this maybe in some discussion. A third, and this was a very important topic we discussed at that late February workshop, it is essential for Lake Tahoe to maintain a competitive advantage of being a sustainable destination to strengthen, the stewardship values that are both among residents and those millions of visitors. And Carol touched on some of that marketing to more management messaging. I'm going to come back to this point in just a couple minutes. Another area that's going to be very important for, and I just want to put on the table, is to increase the diversity of activities, both through the experience and settings, while you're protecting those natural and cultural resources. And then finally, and this is really going to be important in terms of looking at the visitor landscape and really looking overall at the tourism ecosystem, if you will, of the Lake Tahoe Basin across 4 seasons, is that it is essential that we have collectively a better ability to evaluate, envision, and attach meaning to destinations with the visitors, to make that connection and to increase their awareness. And I'll come back to that point. So what we want to see in terms of a responsible recovery for Lake Tahoe is that, one, we want to see all the efforts, and I'm presenting with you a series of filters that you can use then for your business, for your operation. If you work for the Forest Service, you know, how are you contributing to this kind of a sustainable tourism ecosystem, if you will? And how does it maximize sustainable economic development for the communities in the basin? How can we collectively, through a responsible recovery, minimize visitation impacts on those natural and cultural assets? And this is something I think that is really key as I continue to develop a better understanding of both the challenges and opportunities in Lake Tahoe. There is a tremendous need to ensure that you're always rebalancing priorities in a strategic manner. So you're not just responding sort of knee-jerk, if you will, always in a crisis mode, but you have done that kind of planning and risk preparation and risk management such that you can anticipate huge influxes of tourists in ways that, well, because of this, and this, we're now better prepared to address that. And that rebalancing is something, it's almost a value that really comes into play. And then, of course, just finally, it's very important, and you've seen this so often, that most of your tourists are actually coming from the bi-state area. And you're seeing possibly an increase with the growth in Reno and the greater Reno area, the Sacramento Valley, obviously San Francisco, and people, as we've learned over the last several months, people are coming from 6, 8, 10 hours away driving to Lake Tahoe because of the extraordinary water and land resources. And that has created frankly, probably an unsustainable visitation model that's going to need to be addressed. So what we want to do, and with the few remaining minutes that I have, I would just kind of frame the following, that it's really, I think, critical for everyone to be thinking about the following, and that what is really the quality of the experience. Carol mentioned this just a little bit ago. And is quality over quantity a reality for you? Right now, you've got 15 million a year. That is a huge quantity issue. Value over volume is so the problem of traffic and other barriers there. A value? Is it valuable or not valuable to people? Do people get and maybe that's how the visitors can even feel about Lake Tahoe if they come and have a bad experience because they can't get to where they want to go. They may not care, frankly, and that is a problem. So, well, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we are modeling, if you will, responsible travel behavior, so that any traveler can and should act responsibly and understand what a clear path to responsible choices looks like. And what I want to underscore here, and it'll be in a point I'll raise in just a couple minutes, is really for the Tahoe Basin experience, we want to normalize sustainability, and that it's in everything in the basin. Second is, and this is a fascinating one as I look more at the numbers and the changing demographics of visitors, is you really need to close the gap between that incredible number of what we'll call casual travelers, or even in many cases, the 40 to 45% of the total visitors who are day trippers, with more aware, informed travelers who've probably done more research, are more aware of their surroundings, have a more deliberate plan, and are frankly spending more over a longer period of time. There's a set of decision filters and thresholds. They differ with these different cross sections of people. And then a third point is really, and this will go to Carol's group and to the Forest Service, TRPA, Tahoe Fund, everybody, is we need to all collectively work to tell better stories about the importance of sustainability and shared responsibility, use accessible language, and avoid just everybody going to the same places because someone on social media said that it should be on your bucket list, etc. So let me chart out, because I'm watching the clock here, what I see is a really important pathway to sustainability for the Lake Tahoe Basin. The first, and we've talked about this already, is it is essential that you all come together, and you're already on this path, and it's very exciting, and I look forward to playing some role into this into the future, is you need to define what that sustainable Tahoe experience is, and use it everywhere, live it everywhere. It needs to be in your DNA from every operator, every accommodation, every traveler, the taxi drivers. They need to know that this is the Tahoe experience, and this is what it's like, and this is what and all the visitors get that message, and that's going to be part of a related point. Carol mentioned at the start of our session today, the destination marketing to destination management, and the first guiding principle of our Future of Tourism Coalition, of our 13 principles, is see the whole picture. And this is an opportunity right now for the Tahoe Basin Collective, the stakeholders, to really see that whole picture and really become true sustainable destination management advocates. And this is very important. Third step on your pathway is that you need to define your tourists better, the tourists, both residents and inbound, foster diversity, equity, and inclusion messaging and expectations. And one of the key things, and Carol started to mention this, and I'm so happy that she led off this discussion because she framed some things very nicely, is I really want to emphasize how important it is for the Tahoe Basin, all of you business owners, to really be focusing on the messaging around what I'll call upstream outdoor awareness. You cannot just have it'll be a failed strategy to have the Tahoe Basin be working on educating and creating a greater environmental and destination awareness of visitors only when they come to the Lake Tahoe Basin. What I think is essential is, and you're already in the path of this, on the pathway for this, is to establish those unified science-based or evidence-based messages and really that messaging around environmental awareness and what the Tahoe experience is like, and people get that when they're in Sacramento, when they're in Reno, when they're wherever, and they're coming to Lake Tahoe. This is very important. So that's that upstream messaging and awareness that I think is going to be very important. Another one, and this we could talk about probably another hour, certainly, is looking at, how are 15 million visitors distributed, almost half of them which are day trippers. I've had a chance to really look at the regional transportation plan, which, as I understand, has as a minimum need $20 million a year and over a 25-year period. I can say with frankness is that the Lake Tahoe Basin will not be successful in developing anything I'm talking about today in terms of being a true sustainable destination for long term, unless you get your transportation planning done and done right and get it funded. So this is something across California and Nevada that is just really essential. And then finally, it's so important to really, and I think Lake Tahoe is in such a unique position for us to work together and develop that four-season kind of visitor or tourism ecosystem to be looking across the tremendous assets and offerings of outdoor recreation and sustainable tourism throughout the Lake Tahoe Basin. So this is a really, really extraordinary place. It's a wonder, it's a privilege to be able to talk to you today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes for some discussion.
Yes, indeed.
Steve, so I'll turn it over to you and maybe Emily in terms of if there's any questions and what have you.
There are a couple questions, and thank you, Dr. Miller, for your inspiring presentation. We really appreciate it, how you've laid out the roadmap and really a commitment required on the part.
Absolutely.
We have to model a behavior as well. And I know
That's right.
Jeanette was on from South Tahoe Refuse. We all saw a tremendous increase in the amount of trash last year. And that's part of this upstream. Be prepared to take your share of the stewardship responsibility. So at any rate, here's a question. How do you address overdemand for tourist amenities without resorting to price discrimination?
Exactly. Well, of course, with tourist amenities, I'm assuming that's talking about bathrooms, water, food, restaurants, etc. It's an extraordinary array of really fine dining and nice hotels and expenses. I think one of the things that's so critical in this is to inform people well of what is and is not available, and to make helpful suggestions, proactive suggestions that if these food and accommodation offerings are outside of your pocketbook range, you're still welcome. Please just plan ahead in the following way. If you're coming as a day tripper, pack a lunch. Bring some, as simple as those kind of instructions and recommendations. So let's say a family of 4 or 5 in the Sacramento Valley are coming. They don't have the financial means to stay in one of the lovely accommodations around the lake itself, or they couldn't get reservations. But nevertheless, they say, well, we want to come out, but how are we going to afford to do this? A little bit of preparation in advance so that they know what is and is not available in a very easy format. And I think one of the ways that this would be very helpful is also probably to translate into Spanish. If you don't already, I think that's a very important. So that those people come and they can enjoy their right to the public lands and waters, which they have the same right as I do, as Steve does, Carol, etc., even residents, and they're not disadvantaged as a result. See, the thing about it that I think you all understand, of course, is one of the reasons there's so many visitors, 15 million a year in Lake Tahoe, is because you have relatively low barriers to entry and access. You have major good highways that come in, and you have huge population centers that are within driving distance. And you have some of the most extraordinary land and water resources in the United States available to people. So as a result, for them to have a quality experience, people need to know what is and isn't available. So a little bit of preparation, I would certainly encourage, and we can talk with Carol and their team at some other point and say, some of those tips, some of those hints about being, good outdoor ethics in terms of, leave no trace ethics for visitors, and also just a little planning and preparation so that your experience is a rich one and a clean and sustainable one. I hope that helps.
No, I think it does. Appreciate it. And you mentioned translating a lot of our messaging into Spanish. I think that's critical as well. And maybe I know that there's lots of other languages being used at Tahoe when you go around, particularly in peak winter or peak summer. You hear a lot of different languages.
Question, yeah.
So a future analysis might be: are there any other languages that we should consider translating some of our messaging to, so that other people from other cultures, other languages also feel comfortable, feel like they are welcome, and know in advance, as you say, what's available and what isn't available. Here's another
Yes,
question.
please.
I love the concept of spiritual elements of a place. Can you talk a little bit more about how to identify and promote our spiritual values? We definitely have that here, but it's often blurred by all the other things that are going on. So,
well, exactly, and I think certainly, and I should point out at the onset, this is very important to me, and I'm adamant that our staff use the way that I've presented it in terms of the natural, cultural, and spiritual. Spiritual is not religious per se. It's not religious doctrine or practice. It's the emotive reaction that we have out in nature. It's really built much more around the reactions we as humans have through what one of my favorite people on the planet who just celebrated his 92nd birthday, Dr. E.O. Wilson, Professor Wilson from Harvard University, whom I have had the good fortune to spend some pretty quality time with over the years. He coined the term biophilia. And this is all about we as a species having that inherent DNA-based need for nature. And it becomes a very spiritual one. You feel better when look at how people feel when they come over the CREST or whatever, and they see the lake for the first time, or they're taking a hike along the Tahoe and they get to see. That becomes spiritual for people because it evokes an emotion, whether it comes through photograph, through art, through experience, through music, interpretation, or through outdoor recreation, whether it's mountain biking, downhill skiing, etc. I think any outdoor recreationist can talk with credibility and authenticity about the spiritual nature of any activity. Someone going on a trail run around the lake, for example, is there a spirituality characterized in that or part of that? I would say, well, you have to ask that individual, but I would say absolutely yes, there's the potential for that. And so I would say, and of course, there are former and are tribal lands in and around the basin. There are strong community spirituality or just connections for people with place, whether it's the lake itself or with different forests, etc. This is all very, very important. And I would encourage, of course, the basin to be recognizing that, because Lake Tahoe Basin is a very special place globally, not just in the US. It is a unique destination that evokes reactions and responses from people that are really quite exceptional. And I would say that's how I'm using spirituality in this.
Appreciate the detailed response on that. So another sort of question, and you mentioned the recently adopted new regional transportation plan for Lake Tahoe, and the fact that the plan does identify about a $20 million annual gap in funding between what we reasonably think is available for transit services, for transportation infrastructure, trails, it's plan calls for. And so, you talked about there's a low barrier to come into Tahoe. How do we deal with some of those issues of how do you fund something? This is a unique area. Many places around the country have a sales tax that's dedicated for local funds for transportation, or they have an indexed gas tax, things like that. Based on your experience, what are some of the more creative ways that you've seen that a region might fund a transportation service to, again, help, support the quality of the experience?
Well, Steve, that or whoever, I can't see, I didn't go to the chat to see who asked that, so I don't know who it was. But 2 days ago, I was with a consortium, including with the Department of Commerce, looking at the Biden administration's next tranche of major funding. I'll use this as an example and also a challenge for the Tahoe Basin. The Economic Development Administration, as part of the Department of Commerce, is going to come out with a $750 million package that is going to be dedicated to regional level. Here's an example of this, to support outdoor recreation and tourism. I'm involved in a small group on this, and to ensure that this is maximized in the communities, that doesn't get caught up at the state level and gets caught in the coffers of any state like California and Nevada, for example, I think this is an example that could present a tremendous opportunity to the Lake Tahoe Basin to access some considerable funding for that. That would be available to provide an opportunity to create new jobs, to create a sustainable funding stream, which you're going to have. If it's an unfunded mandate, it'll never go anywhere. I believe certainly, and I know that the Tahoe Basin has had some very difficult and rather contentious at times discussions around transportation, and without question, you're going to need to look at a new model. And I would be so bold, and maybe I'm sticking my neck out, as to you have to consider the prospect of satellite parking outside of the basin and providing sustainable transportation options, which you could perhaps get significant federal funding for, around electric transportation, for example, like they're using in Yosemite and Yellowstone and elsewhere. You know, the lake is not so big that you couldn't have electric transportation. The key is, if people pay for something and are giving up their vehicle for the day, let's say to go to a hiking trailhead or to go to Emerald Bay or something, if they know that they're going to get value, and that they know that they're not going to get caught in a traffic jam, but rather they'll be freed from it. And in fact, they're incentivized to do that, to where they have almost a privileged access, then it will matter. And I think that there's going to be a need into the future to at least very critically assess the kind of reservation systems that some national parks are undertaking, and they're working in most cases. I'm not suggesting, I mean, you have a very different situation because Lake Tahoe is very, what I'll call, porous. You have major roads coming in, and so many people come in by vehicle. But imagine if you could reduce some of that and still provide, actually, you're not just, it's not punitive, it's a positive contribution, that you can come and enjoy the extraordinary water and land resources of the Lake Tahoe Basin. And you're freed from the tyranny of your automobile and stuck in traffic. We're going to provide you an option where you can get to any resource for a day visit. You won't pollute. You'll have a net zero footprint. And it's all about kind of what the Tahoe experience should look like in the next 10, 20, and 50 years kind of thing. I would argue that that's the plan you should take. And you could create something that's already in very high to pristine condition and be the stewards in perpetuity of an extraordinary place. But you'd have to make changes, no question. But California and Nevada, for example, the transportation departments in each should, and the Federal Highway Administration, should be able to really come to bat. And then your coalition of businesses in the Tahoe Basin, 10 parking spaces you have that are already full, and you're not going to get any more customers because they can't get access to your business. Right. But if there was a tram system, and I'm just using that as an example, I know it's far more complicated than that, but those are the questions that need to be asked. And it's within you have the infrastructure, and you have the demand. I mean, look at the people, the numbers. Imagine if you were to able, here's a proposition. If you were to able to put this into play and then reduce the number of just day visitors down from 15 million a year to 10, let's say, or 12 million, and there's a sustainable system in place for transporting and distributing visitors, that would be a sustainable future for Lake Tahoe.
You know, I'm pretty familiar with, and I know you've looked at it too in detail. I'm pretty familiar with the regional transportation plan, and it has a lot of those elements in there. The missing element is enough money to make it happen. And you know, I appreciate your reference to the Economic Development Administration funds and others. We've been pretty spoiled at Tahoe, where the two states, and the federal government, as the largest landowner, have invested a lot of money here in a lot of different areas. But we still need to come up with a viable local match, because some of these federal and state programs do come with a match requirement. And right now, you know, we're reaching into our pocket, and the hand goes all the way down your leg because there's nothing in the pocket. So
Well, I would say some kind of a fee-based structure,
Right.
in essence, sort of tongue-in-cheek, a priced ticket to ride for like Tahoe's ticket to ride, where you pay, but you get something for it. It's not
Right.
just a fee that's like, well, I'm paying money so I can sit in traffic. Wait, that's terrible.
Right.
No, you're paying a fee, and this is very transparent. This is exactly what it goes to. You are contributing as a steward of this extraordinary resource. People will buy into that if it's messaged in the right way, and everybody in the basin is on the same page in terms of messaging.
Right, and that's
a big challenge. Yeah, but it's but
here's another question,
okay.
Dr. Miller, and
Sure.
this has to do with this person believing, and I think accurately so, that we need more zero waste events. That we did have a lot of people coming up, taking food in places and then kind of leaving their refuse there, and then also a lot of our restaurants, because they were only doing takeout, had to and it was difficult to find properly compostable, I should
Right.
say, takeout materials. There's some challenges there with the materials. So this person is advocating for more zero waste events and local composting efforts. What are some of the examples that you've seen in your travels working with other destinations grappling with the same issue?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I must say I don't know what is in place up to now across all the different offerings, both for food as well as accommodation, in terms of managing both trash waste as well as food waste. Like you said, compostable versus non. It's very interesting. I'll get out of the U.S. for a quick example, but CREST, we've been working with a number of hotels in the Montego Bay area of Jamaica. And we're also working with World Wildlife Fund's efforts around managing food waste. And they have a far bigger program than this one I'm talking about, but we partnered on this. We were looking at what these hotels could do to really be contributing to more of what we call a circular economy. And that food is expensive. Tourists use food, have an expectation, but what's happening is that the local farmers in this particular area around Montego Bay aren't able to sell their products to the hotels. So if we can get them to sell their fruits and vegetables to the hotels, it start to close the loop there. But also the food waste. Now we're working with a Jamaican company. This is an example, not necessarily applicable in Lake Tahoe, but it's very doable. Is they've got biodigesters. The food is being taken, and Montego Bay, if any of you have been there, it's a interesting factoid. Montego Bay is named after the fat that it comes from pork rinds, manteca in Spanish, if any of you, and it was changed into Montego Bay. Pork is a very important fact. Well, you can feed pigs anything, and they'll eat at most anything. So what is being done is that they're being fed the food waste for the farmers so that they can, and also the food is going to biodigesters, and the economy is supporting the farmers, and the tourists are now going to be getting food that's produced locally as opposed to the very expensive imported. I think that the kind of food waste and sustainable waste programs, there are a number out there. I just don't have enough knowledge of what's in place in the Tahoe Basin, but that is spot on, has to be a key element to this. And that's really your sustainability blueprint for the basin, needs to be that kind of full service treatment, not just looking at one or two key points. And that's where, if everyone is living that, everyone is sharing that message, that tourists are going to come, and they're going to come because not only of the extraordinary land and water resources there, and just an exceptional recreation and personal experience, but also that it's a sustainable place, and that that everybody's committed to it there. And if I'm going to go there with my family, I need to make that commitment as well. Otherwise, there's other choices. That's a sustainable place. And that's the kind of branding. I think Tahoe needs to be branded this way 100%. I think you have it within your reach to do so, where most places may talk about it, but probably not, at a very high biodiversity and ecosystem services level. I mean, that's why you can hear I'm so excited about this, because,
Right.
but because it is within our capability as passionate and informed businesses and just people, stakeholders.
Can you talk a little bit more, Dr. Miller, about the book Over Tourism that you referenced that you've been working on for a while? It was just recently published. There is a chapter on Lake Tahoe in that book. What if somebody was to acquire the book either through your website or whatever?
Yeah, it's published by Island Press. You can certainly get the access to it. In fact, we have a 20. I'll do a little sales. We have a 20% discount right now with a code. Use the code HONEY, HONEY, on Island Press or Amazon or any other book distributor, and you can get 20% off on that. The interesting thing is we looked at it from over tourism from a governance lens, from a protected areas lens, from a historical and cultural perspective. So, for example, for practitioners like all the folks on this call, in Lake Tahoe, there are a number of sections. There, obviously, in the governance section, Julie Regan wrote a terrific chapter on the planning and partnership that's in place in the Tahoe Basin. But also, there are examples in other major destinations that have similar issues to Lake Tahoe that each of you can look at, and it's very much for people who are kind of practitioners. And it doesn't mean you have to be a land use planner or a tourist destination planner. If you're a business owner and you're looking at what someone has done in a number of different areas, it could stimulate thinking and opportunities for you to consider in the context of Tahoe. So we would strongly encourage that for people to reach out. Yeah, that's a great question.
And I want to mention that Emily has put in the chat the link to the book.
Oh, great. Thank you, Emily. Yeah.
So, we have time here for like one more question coming up, and then we'll bring this program to a close, noting that it will be available on our chamber website. If you watched it and saw, hey, I know somebody or group of people that should see this, it'll be available on our Facebook page as well. And I think ultimately we're going to partner with the Center for Responsible Travel and get it on their Facebook page as well. But the question here, Dr. Miller, when 99% of companies try to define their culture, they make it so complicated that nobody can say what it is. Are there studies that show how simple they have to be in order for tourists and locals to actually understand? I guess it's the simplicity of a mess. Using the example of don't mess with Texas, that was easy. And
excuse me.
Once it goes beyond a few words, this person's point of view is that it kind of gets lost, it gets overly complicated.
Well, there's expertise. So I have others on staff that are far smarter than me on marketing and messaging. But what I think is critical is to and I don't know whether the Tahoe Basin team, your collection of businesses and agencies and such are I don't know where you are exactly in this kind of planning and discussion, but it is important to have a simple, elegant way to in essence what your brand statement is or your tagline for the Lake Tahoe Basin going forward. I just can't encourage you enough to. I encourage you without question to go the sustainability route. That is something that, and maybe sustainability is not the word to use, and I'm that's possibly jargony for most people, but I think it's about nature, it's about authenticity, it's about systems, it's about a place, special place that needs to be protected in perpetuity. And so find something that resonates for everyone, that's very difficult. When you look at company side languages and taglines and such, and how they develop their culture, one of the ways that I think any of your businesses could is I would encourage you to go to look at the qualifications or the qualities that B Corps, registered B Corps need to do to become a B Corp, which is a very onerous process, by the way, and it's very difficult. And when you are that, because there's third person verifications, my point in this is to look at what some of the elements are, not to do it necessarily, but to look to see what the companies that have become B Corps, what they do. Companies like Intrepid Travel, for example, is one of the in terms of tourism operations. So if you go and you look at what they've done, now you don't have to become a B Corp in order to model good behavior, but that's the key, is to pick those companies in the sector that you're in, or the discipline that you're in, whether it's accommodations, food service, tour operator, whatever, transportation, and see who's doing it right. How do they message, and determine then how they got to that path. And the key is to take some action. Make improvements on your pathway to sustainability is as important as getting certified or doing anything else. And so that's what I would suggest to anyone.
Very good. Well, Dr. Miller, we so much appreciate your time, your collected wisdom of your years of experience in this field, and your international travels and work, bringing that home to Tahoe, and your particular passion about Tahoe and what we can and should do to stay on the path to get on the path and stay on the path of sustainability. So thank you so very much for being with us today. We want to thank Carol Chaplin and our colleagues at Tahoe South for being part of the program today, and all the initiatives that they're working on along this path with the other organizations, the chambers and the destination management organizations in our region. We also want to thank our ongoing virtual town hall sponsor, Picasso, the modern way to buy and own a second home. You can learn more about them at picasso.com, PACASO.com. So Dr. Miller, I know we'll be talking to you again soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for your time. Thanks to all of those of you who joined us today. And again, we'll be out with messages as to how you can see this program again, share it with your friends and colleagues, because it was, I think, so very important. So thank you, sir. Have a great rest of the day.
Wonderful weekend to everybody. Be safe. Have a great, safe, enjoyable time. And happy Juneteenth today, which was just declared. I should have said that at the onset. It's a very exciting new development for the U.S. Still a lot of around. And certainly go to responsibletravel.org, CREST website. We have a host of free resources, responsible travel tips. And if you need to reach me directly, I forgot that I had a slide that had my email on it, but it's gmiller@responsibletravel.org. I guess I could have put it in the chat in case anybody had a question for me directly or wanted more information. Happy to field anything. And Steve, if you get any additional ones, let me know.
Absolutely, will do.
All right, okay,
thank
great.
you all. Talk to you soon.
Happy
Bye
summer.
for now.
Okay, bye.